Wi-Fi Sheep would like to say a huge thank you to all of you that kindly support us. Help us continue to bring new videos like this. Join patreon.com/Wi-Fi Sheep from just $1 a month. Hello, how are you doing? And a very warm welcome back, especially if you're joining me for the first time, to youtube.com/Wi-Fi Sheep with me, Tom. This is my coverage of the announcement of Raspberry Pi 5. Now, to put this into some context, I'm recording this on Friday the 29th of September 2023. The news was announced, or at least I think it was announced yesterday, that was the 28th, the Thursday, at around 6 o'clock in the morning, British Summer Time, or GMT +1. I did see it very early in the morning. Originally I thought, shall I just rush on to YouTube, make a video, get all the views and hits and not really look at the product or think about it? Or shall I wait a bit and come back the next day with something, hopefully more intelligent to say? Plus the fact I also had to go to work yesterday, so that's kind of why I decided to kind of literally sleep on it. So here we are. I have a feeling of deja vu. About 4 years ago, which is last time that we had a major Pi announcement, I did a video on Pi 4, and just off the back of the announcement I had some issues with it, and I made a video, and it really split opinion right down the middle, and I got a lot of hate for that video. However, since then, and actually after having Pi 4s for real and trying to do things with them, people kind of found out that there were issues with it, and some people that disagreed with me came round to agreeing with me. That said, I still completely stand by everything I said in that video, and when I saw Pi 5 yesterday, I had some issues with it again. What I will say is that I'm not in any way just hating on Raspberry Pi products. Hate is a very powerful word that gets bounded around. That's not the case here at all. I have an awful lot to thank Raspberry Pi for. I owe Raspberry Pi an awful lot. It's allowed me to do the YouTube channel. It's allowed me to earn the revenue and the money I have earned. And it's fundamentally got me jobs and things because of what I picked up from, the early 2012s onwards through Raspberry Pi. I've still got my original boxed Pi here. You've probably seen it on the channel a few times. And, we still use Raspberry Pi here on the channel. We are using Raspberry Pi as part of some of the project work, and will continue to do so. So this is not in any way, shape or form deliberately hating on Raspberry Pi, or I think I was accused last time of trying to manipulate YouTube's algorithms, or no. If I knew how to manipulate YouTube's algorithms, trust me, I'd be doing it. What I will also say is when Raspberry Pi 400 came out, that was much better. It still had problems and it still had issues that I didn't like, but 400, as far as I was concerned, was a lot better until it was surpassed by the Orange Pi 800, which, although was a clone, it was actually a better product. And that brings me on to another point, which I know some of you will bring up before I get into the meat of the new Raspberry 5, is this is a sponsored channel, normally sponsored channel, and although the views obviously are my own and absolutely personally my own views, which you are completely entitled to disagree with, by the way. You don't have to agree with me. It's totally fine, but just hear me out. This is normally a sponsored channel, and I have been sent in the past sponsored boards. This is a good example. This was the Zimmer board, which was x86 from earlier in the year. And you're probably thinking, well, that's great, Tom. So you're only saying horrible things about Pi 5 because, you know, you're not being sponsored by them and you don't say horrible things about products that people are paying you to talk about. Fair point. But what I will say is this, is, yeah, I'm not being sponsored by Raspberry Pi, but that doesn't make me hostile towards them. I don't like some of the decision making they've done in the past few years, and I don't like some of the features and what they're doing with the boards, and I'll come into why to try and justify my answer. Yes, I'm sent alternatives, but I only show products here on the channel that I generally believe in. And trust me, I'm offered all sorts of things, and a lot of it I turn down because it's rubbish, a lot of it, or very, very poor, and I'm not going to, you know, take my audience as fools. So when I show a product, like when I showed this one, and I showed Banana Pie, Banana Pie is up there, actually behind me on the shelf. When I showed those products, it's because generally I thought there was something interesting there, and I thought it was interesting to show people. And I do have another x86 board on the way from China, which will be a sponsored video, which I fully intend to show you as well. Does that warp my view of the Pi? I hope not, but I accept that criticism that people might throw at me. That's why I just wanted to address it before we start. Right, so overall with the Raspberry Pi 5, let me take you to an article I was looking at. Okay, so this is from hackster.io, and it's just one of the sites I have actually been looking at. So we can see here is the new Raspberry Pi 5 in a similar form factor to what we had previously. I have to stress I don't have one right now. I put one on order, so we will have one here on the channel. I don't have one right now. This is not a review. This is just a reaction video to the news. What I will say off the bat is I'm disappointed by HDMI twin mini micro HDMI things that they put back on. I had issue with those on the Pi 4. I don't like them on the 400. I still don't like them now. And bar one Chinese clone company, I believe, no one has copied it because it's not a good idea, basically. I had people before say to me, oh, I use it. You're talking rubbish. You are probably, if you use it, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are probably one of 4 people that probably use it outside of industry. It was done as an industry thing for running dual monitors for call centers is why it originally happened. It's just a pain. It's a complete pain because if you take your 400, for example, which I was doing, Raspberry Pi 400, very useful machine. You take it out to an exhibition or you're doing a talk or something, and if you forget your adapter, you're screwed. You're completely screwed because you can't adapt it up to full-size HDMI. You can't, adapt it to any other standard. It's really, really annoying. And that's one of the things I took issue with going forward. The form factor of the board itself has changed again. So the USB and the Ethernet have now swapped over again back to how they were in Pi 3 configuration or nearabouts. We've lost the audio jack. That's gone. And we're still using USB-C, which we're all forced over to it with the Pi 4 400. However, you do now need a new power supply because the Raspberry Pi 4 one, I don't think it's powerful enough. You now need something with more ampage in it. So I've had to order a new power supply as well. This won't fit any of the cases either, I believe. Let's just scroll down the article. It's got the specs here. Now, credit where credit is due. The specs of Pi 5 are actually quite interesting. The CPU is a Broadcom. There was a rumor going around that it was going to be something else. It was going to be a RISC-V or RISC-V chipset. But no, they've stayed with ARM. It's a Broadcom chip. 4 cores. I've got boards here with equivalent ARM chips with hexacore, 6 cores. 2.4 gigahertz. Some people have already said they've got it up to 3 gigahertz. So yeah. And it's a Cortex A76. The GPU Broadcom VidiCore which I think was as before. It's a new version of it. You've got obviously video decoding. Something called the Southbridge chip, which, if we scroll back up, is this branded chip here. Basically, they've created their own USB interface I/O controller. So this also controls a number of the other I/O input-output devices as well as the USB, and it's a much faster control method. So it's called a Southbridge chip. So RAM 4 to 8 gig. Yeah, as before, I've ordered just a 4 gig version. Storage, disappointing. This is one of the other areas I'm really disappointed with, actually. Every other clone board I've got, or sort of Pi alternative that I've been sent or I bought myself, has got eMMC storage. You can use most of them with SD cards, but you can actually load an operating system onto the board. It has its own NAND-based eMMC chip storage. The Zima board has it. I should have got it down, but the Orange Pi, sorry, which is running the display, that has it. Banana Pi has it. Fully expecting that Raspberry Pi we're going to do this for Pi 5. It's about time. It's becoming a standard. No, they didn't do it. Yes, you can add hard drive modules and solid state storage modules via hats. Yes, I get that, but they haven't done it, and that's disappointing, actually. Again, is it cost? We'll come to cost in a minute, actually, but I just okay, never mind. Yeah. So we've got the same USB to USB 3 to USB 2 as before. Could we not have just had USB 3? I mean, I guess in a way I'm pleased it's not sort of USB-C or something like that, like Apple has done, because that is annoying as well. Okay. This is new. PCI Express, which is potentially useful, depending on what you're using the products for. Again, a lot of this is going to be down to personal preference and choice and what you're using the products for. Networking, yeah, that's pretty much become to standard now. Display, I've talked about that. Camera inputs have now changed, so you do need to change the type of cables you use. We've got the cost here, so yeah, that's in dollars. It's exactly the same in pound sterling. So I bought the 4 gig version at £60, $60, which is, I can't remember, where was Pi 4 region? Was that around 40, 45 or something like that? Which kind of brings me on to another point, is who is this for? If you know what I mean. It's clearly not for the originally intended purpose of what Raspberry Pi 1 back in the day, what that was meant for, and all the other boards after it. It can't be for education. Now, I know education is a very wide subject. When I say education, that can mean anything from a preschooler right through to a postgraduate student, or it can't. So I'm talking middle schools, primary schools, secondary schools, early college, something like that. It's not for that market because it's expensive. Not only have you now got £60, $60 board, you now need to buy a new power supply, you need to buy a new case. If you were running with camera modules or anything, they're not going to fit. Still need an SD card, and you're going to need an SD card of a reasonable size, so minimum 16, 32 gig. So that's quite a price. I mean, I've spent nearly, what have I spent? £100. So yeah, around about £100, 100 and some odd dollars to buy a whole new system. So you could argue, if you wanted to have like a stereotypical demographic of who would buy this, middle-aged men is who it's going to, who will buy and has been buying or has now been pre-ordering Raspberry Pi. that brings me on to another point, actually. Very interesting. For the very first time, it's a pre-order system. Normally, they just drop a product and it's there available to buy. At the moment, they've opened up pre-ordering. I put a pre-order in. I'm sure many of you already have. And we're going to have them delivered sometime next month, apparently. That's different, and that shows a slightly different take. Yeah, it's... I don't know. I put a tweet out yesterday as my first reaction was I'm sort of need a very wide fence to sit on. There are some quite good features. Other features, by the way, with this, we've lost the audio jack, which might be a problem, but they have got, there's a pin header. I think I can find it. Yeah. So there's here, see it says vid. That's for composite, PAL, or NTSC out. The UART as well for serial work. Now, that's something we have been doing on the channel. UART has now been broken out. So traditionally, UART was here on the GPIO, and it still is. It's roughly, I think it's those two pins there for RXTX UART. So you've now got a separate UART. So that's welcomed. You now have a socket for an onboard or real-time clock battery that you can fit, and that's the adapter for it there. So that's welcome. We also now have a power switch for the very first time. Again, that is welcome. So, you know, it's not all bad. Oh, and there's also a socket here for external fan. I have bought a hat interface for this board as well. That's why my price has come to £100 odd. It's quite a cool combined heatsink and fan that sort of sits into this module space, and it powers straight off this socket here, not tying up any of the GPIO, which, you know, yeah, I'll give them credit for that. It is, you know, an achievement. It's an advantage. It's an improvement over what we've had previous. Also, there was something about they've done something to the bottom of the board so it doesn't, if you put the board down on a metal surface, apparently it doesn't short out or something. It rises on its own accord or something, but on the underside of the board. I think that's correct. I read that somewhere. So it's certainly very interesting, and I think for the right applications, the power, apparently it's meant to be twice as fast as Raspberry Pi 4. So emulation, desktop work, I'm guessing AI, robotics, AI, machine learning, those kind of applications, the kind of place we're going, and a lot of makers are going. And also, don't forget, industry and some academia and education is in that space as well. This is going to be very, very welcome. The only criticism I will have with that is if you're going to create an ARM board and they're going to try and sell it as good as your desktop computer, and people want a Windows desktop experience. By the way, we did run Windows on the Pi 400, if you remember. So I imagine that Windows on this would be probably quite usable, actually. That aside, you get into the space of, well, why don't you just use or buy very competitive, price-wise and power-wise, x86 development boards? So again, I know I keep showing you the box. Shall I get it out the box? It's not sponsored this time. I just still have it lying around, and it's been very useful. I'll get it out. So, you know, boards like that, which are x86 and actually have full-size PCI slots and SATA drives on the back. I did a full review on that. But you start getting into that space of thinking, well, why would you want Pi? If you want PC type capabilities, then buy something that effectively is a PC and can run Windows, or, you know, an x86 Linux. So again, you know, the Raspberry Pi is now in a crowded space, a space it created for itself and it once owned. Then it went quiet. Now it's a shared space, and yes, I'm paid to talk about these products and I'm sent these for free, but they are good products. and Pi 5 is going to have to do an awful lot to compete in that space. It was actually very interesting how one of the interviews Ed and Upton did with a couple of the YouTubers or press that had advanced sighting of all this. By the way, I am not one of them, so I hear it when you hear it. Ed Upton was very interesting when he said that they were prioritizing makers for the Raspberry Pi 5 over industry, which is polar opposites to what they did during the pandemic, where you could, as a maker, you couldn't get hold of anything. Though it wasn't directly Raspberry Pi's fault, they didn't exactly do anything to assist in the dying makerspace community type thing, where all the Pi jams, especially my part of the world, shut down. The makerspaces actually collapsed as well. They didn't seem to care. They literally cared about prioritizing for some bizarre industry. Couldn't tell us what the industry was. When they did, it was some strange mum and pop audio synth something company that was like, well, that's not big industry that you're kind of, touting at us. I mean, yes, things have improved right now, but by then the damage was done. A lot of children and families that are struggling with cost of living, can't afford luxuries like this. You put the price up for this, I get it, it does more, but it's still expensive. And it's only people kind of like me that either have YouTube channels like this that could justify it, or have disposable incomes to buy this kind of stuff. It is not the cheapest stuff in the world. And I mean, immediately off the bat, it's kind of, where's the advantage other than a speed increase? So if you're trying to play, I guess you could probably get up to PlayStation 2 or GameCube type games would probably be emulatable now if the emulators will compile, which it probably would. We already mentioned AI learning, machine learning, that kind of thing, artificial intelligence, that kind of stuff, which would probably benefit hugely from these type of boards. Yeah, so I'm ordered one. We'll do a review of one, and I've got an idea for one or two little things we can do and should do here on the channel to test it. So we will absolutely be looking at one, but I was hoping for a little bit more. And I think I originally said in a video quite a long time ago where I said that when Pi 5 comes out, it's going to have to be something special. As far as I'm personally concerned, it's not special enough, and that's the issue. Let's just talk about something else quickly, because I've been gone on with this video for quite a long time already, nearly 25 minutes. The new processor is basically 64-bit only, and we knew this, and it's just the way things are going. And this is one of these crying over spilt milk type things. As you know, if you are a regular to the channel, that one of the projects or systems that we cover here is RISC OS, which was the British Acorn desktop operating system, the original ARM operating system that was built on the backbone of the BBC Micro. I've got one of the original 8 bits there, and it was that operating system updated for the modern age, and we did a whole video series called RISC OS Direct. Well, RISC OS is obviously not going to work on the Pi 5, and it's not a case of, oh, we'll patch and update it. It's really not going to work on the Pi 5. RISC OS is a hard-coded ARM 32-bit operating system. On the Pi, it only ever used a single core. So even if you ran on the multi-core later models, it ran in 32-bit mode on a single core. The OS still in 2023 does not have native Wi-Fi support at all. And the ways to get around getting Wi-Fi on the system is not cheap. It's not the case of just installing a driver and there you go. You have to have a whole separate rig. It can't use the Pi Wi-Fi at all. You have to have a separate rig, sometimes running a Linux OS to network that into RISC OS to make it work. The people who own and run and manage and do stuff with RISC OS have known about this for a very long time. I've had conversations with people, which I won't go into here, but I have said literally 64-bit only Raspberry Pi is on the way. I was saying this 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago I was saying this. You need to update this operating system or come up with some kind of solution. Otherwise, you're dead in the water the minute Pi 5, or well, at the time we thought it was Pi 4, but Pi 5 launches. So a lot of stuff, a lot of early stuff from Raspberry Pi's ecosystem, and I'm talking about 2012, is not going to work. RISC-OS will be a casualty. Now, the argument there is there's plenty of older Raspberry Pis, and Raspberry Pi Zero, which uses the original Pi chip, is still being made, and it runs fine on that. And yeah, it's not like we're going to be starved of infrastructure or technology to run this on, but obviously it's progress, and it had to happen, and it should happen. And again, that's why I say spilt milk. I'm not going to cry over it. It's one of those things. And it's not Raspberry Pi's fault. It's RISC-OS people's fault for not updating the operating system. You can't update the operating system because it's hard-coded in ARM. If you update it, you have to rewrite most of the libraries. If you do that, most of the software will break. So the solution will be an emulation layer, and I've talked about this, and I've seen other systems do it, such as the Amiga builds, and I saw a brilliant one for the Atari ST that used all like the Falcon system that ran on the Pi, and it used an emulator to create a 68,000 Motorola layer, and then the OS ran on top of that. And that will be how RISC-OS, if it's going to survive, is going to have to run, that you're going to have some sort of hard code layer, an emulator like a Linux or something underneath, emulator to emulate an older ARM chip, and then you will have your layer on top of that, which will be your RISC-OS kernel, and that will run happily in a emulated 32-bit ARM, single-core ARM environments. And eventually you may be able to find that if you have a host OS that can run Wi-Fi drivers, you can just feed that through a network stack. So you might find, although RISC-OS will never natively support Wi-Fi, you may find if it's in an emulator layer that it will see a network connection from an outside external stack running within your OS. So for those of you that are going to be hardcore Acorn nutters, that is probably the way that and maybe one or two other systems that are going to fall by the wayside in the future will work if they have a significant following or importance to carry on working on modern hardware. So definitely something that I might even look at myself here on the channel, because it's not too difficult to get an Acorn emulator up and running RISC-OS. We did it before with RISC-V boards, which sitting over there. We did originally where I got RISC-OS to run on non-native architecture, and there's already a version for RISC-OS Direct that runs on Windows via emulation. So it's one of those things, but yeah, it's the casualties of progress. I'll say that much. Right, well, that brings us roughly to everything I wanted to say on Raspberry Pi 5. Again, you don't have to agree with me. You may have a different point of view. I'm very open to respectful, intelligent conversation about this. What I'm not open to is just hate speech and insults being flooded at me, especially from people that don't even watch the video. It's just the minute you have anything about Raspberry Pi that isn't all amazing positive, and you're standing up, in front of camera, waving the product around, going, "You should buy this, it's incredible." If you actually question anything, you seem to get a ton of hate mail or hate comments, which people just get blocked. I don't have time for it. But, if you generally disagree with me or think differently about things, then that's great. And I totally respect you if you, have a different opinion to me. No problem at all. If anyone wants to share anything, obviously you can drop in the comments, and we'll see where we go from there. We will be looking at one. I have bought one. We will do a unboxing review. We will set it up, and I think we will see about getting stuff running on it and see what it's like. It might be that hardware wise it's really great, and I change my opinion a little bit more or soften up how I feel about it, but we're in a very different place now to where we were when Pi launched, and sort of its heyday, its prime, if you like, which was that kind of 2012 through to 2018. Post that, 2019 things were beginning to slide. Then obviously we had the pandemic, and it's changed how things work now. They just aren't the community groups. They certainly aren't the groups in education that are interested in it anymore. Younger children aren't coming through. The children that were children when Pi was originally launched are now adults. So they're now 18, 21 when they were 14 or something when this launched, if not a bit younger. It's possible that Raspberry Pi Foundation or Commercial Holdings or whatever they're called now realise that. So they're aiming a product now at the kids that are now adults that were kids originally on the original Pis, and they will continue. If they like the product, they'll continue to buy it. Now they have jobs and disposable incomes, and maybe that's the logic. It's a shame if it's no longer about STEM and no longer about education or, you know, bringing in the next generation of people. If it's not been about that for some time, regardless of what people say. It's not been that way at all for some time. It's been about commercial holdings. It's been about industry. It's about making something, stamping Pi on it and selling as many as you can. And that's kind of where I felt this has been for some time. So hence why many of us, be it with some commercial and sponsored backing, but many of us went to look for alternatives and found some very interesting and very competitive things on the market, which was always going to be the issue when Raspberry Pi 5 came out. What was it going to do in this space, especially as you've got very competitive alternative boards like that, like Banana Pi, like Orange Pi, and many, many others out there in the marketplace. If you haven't done so already, please do consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you real soon right here on the channel. Until next time, thanks so much for your company. Bye for now.